What is up, Wizards fans? And welcome to another edition of the Department of DMV Hoops podcast. I'm Will Clayton. I'm joined here today by Brendan. You might recognize him from Twitter, Threes was Trice. He's also part of the Department of Gallery Hoops, Department of Gallery Place podcast. Wizards of Gallery Place. My God, I'm running over all my words. But yeah, we're coming over after that exciting Grizzlies Wizards game to give you the post game recap. Before we dive into a couple things, I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors at Surfside Vodka. I could definitely use a couple of those after watching this one. And then BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting, from the earliest odds to in-game live betting. BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC and MMA. Head to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. So, without much further ado, I think we'll just kind of dive into this one. Brendan, I'm going to kick it over to you to start off. What are you thinking coming off of this game?
Yeah, I think that we have been kind of spoiled in a sense so far through the 6 games prior to this evening, where even in the games that we lost, I think that there was a lot of positives to take away, and the team was relatively competitive throughout, at least some, if not most parts of the games that they've been a part of. And tonight, they were really just not competitive from start to finish. And we're going to see more games like that. I don't think the expectation should be for us to keep it close every game and just lose because of inexperience. The inexperience really showed up tonight throughout the whole game. And again, this was a Grizzlies team that was without its best player and one of the best players in the league with Ja Morant. So you would have liked the Wizards to keep it a little bit more competitive than what it was. But from start to finish, I mean, there was never really a doubt that it was Memphis all the way. Scottie Pippen Jr., it looks like, had a triple-double. We had a player, Bub Carrington, who was just a couple assists away from getting one himself. But really, outside of that, there isn't much positives to take away on the Wizards side. I mean, I guess if you're a Jonas Valanciunas fan, he didn't put up a bad statistical game. But there were no Wizards that played that finished positive in the plus minus. And on the other side, every major rotational player for the Grizzlies finished very, very positive in the plus minus. So again, this was just really a game that was never in doubt from start to finish. And while the Grizzlies do have some other competitive players outside of Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson, who had a good game tonight, but you would have liked to see the Wizards, I think, keep it a little bit more competitive than what it was.
Yeah, I kind of think you hit the nail on the head right there with the we kind of came out of the gate playing a little bit above expectations relative to what this year is probably going to look like. We were getting a lot of really, really nice minutes from Poole, from the young guys, and that was kind of carrying us to be competitive for a bit. But like you said, this one was pretty much just kind of over in the first quarter. They jumped out to, I think, at least a 14-point lead in the first at some point. We whittled it down to 10, and then after that, everything kind of just fell off the rails. I do think this is something that we're probably going to see a bit more of as the season goes on. Yes, I'd love to see the young guys, and I'd like seeing them get all the minutes and keep playing. But we have to remember, at the end of the day, these guys are rookies. We're starting 3 rookies, and with that comes inexperience. And then you compare that to this Memphis roster, which they're missing Ja, they're missing Bane, they're missing Marcus Smart, they're missing all these guys, but they're a very deep team, and they're a playoff team in the West. And I think that level of competitive disparity kind of reared its head tonight. Hopefully they can kind of have a bounce back. There are a couple good moments you can take away from it, but for the most part, it was a lot of bad. I think a lot of us were kind of expecting more games like this coming into the season than what we got treated to for the first 6 games. So, we'll see how they respond after that.
Yeah, I don't know how long it was ago it was announced that Ja wasn't going to play. I don't know if that was a last minute thing or if they knew coming into tonight that he wasn't going to play, but I was very much so looking forward to seeing how Bub handled Ja and how Bilal would handle a guy like Ja. So moving away from that, because that matchup was, I guess, interesting in hindsight, but still not the matchup that I think most people wanted to see. So let's shift to something people may care about a little bit more. Alex Sarr versus Jaren Jackson. Um, I think that Alex Sarr competed a little bit, and there were a couple times that Jaren Jackson thought that he could get an easy layup, and Sarr has done what he's been doing all season, which is relatively decently contest shots at the rim. But Jaren Jackson, I think, is just a little bit more physical of a being than Alex Sarr is at this stage in his very young life cycle and NBA career. So it really, to me, wasn't all that competitive. The talent and the experience, again, we're going to use the word experience and the word inexperience a lot, because a lot of times in these games when you have such a young team, that's what it's going to come down to. And it's not just about closing a game, it's throughout the game what to do in different situations and having a feel for situational basketball. And while they may have had it at the college level, our young players, but that's still something that they have to develop at the NBA level when they're going against NBA level players and NBA level coaching staff and strategy. So it's just another big learning curve that they're probably really not going to pick up until year 3. So we have to be very, very patient with them as far as our expectation of them being able to compete and finish games. But I don't know what your thoughts were on Alex Sarr and Jaren Jackson, but Alex did have some nice moments, but overall, I thought that Jaren you could just tell he's much farther along in the learning curve as far as this NBA game is played.
Yeah, I think you said the inexperience versus experience line is something that's probably going to be said a lot this year. And then in Sarr's case, he still has some physical developing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, you see clearly the difference between, being a 19, 20-year-old getting shoved around by Jaren Jackson, who's been in the league several years, and not for nothing came into the league also as kind of a twig and had to bulk himself up. So, hopefully that's something Sarr can recognize. And, I don't think it's lost on him that he's getting shoved around by stronger guys. But I did like that, you know, I was talking about it with Eli in the pregame. I really liked when they matched up against the Heat that Sarr didn't seem afraid to go at Bam Adebayo. And he seemed to have a little bit of aggression. I didn't see as much of that aggression tonight as I would have liked to see. I saw some of those flashes that, make him a promising, versatile player, like grabbing a board and going down in transition, finding Bub for an easy assist and getting a good bucket. Those are all really nice things. I love the effort on the defensive end, but yeah, at a certain point, it's just going to become apparent that these guys are still rookies and young. And there's going to be nights like this where a good veteran player is going to get the better of them. But I wasn't, I wasn't too down on the matchup. It's Jaren Jackson's just a good player, and he outplayed Sarr tonight. But I don't think it's anything where I'm gonna abandon ship on Sarr or anything. All of these rookies. It's way too early for anything like that, and people saying the sky's falling or they're soft or anything like that. I don't know if I can buy into that. I do think I'd like to see Sarr try and play a little closer to the basket, but I just don't think that's something that he has post footwork for. I don't think he has the confidence in himself playing down low. And then on top of that, back to, I hate to keep repeating it, but he just doesn't have the strength to
not physically able to, even if he wanted to.
So that's why he's floating around on the perimeter. That's why he's taking 3-pointers. And, I'm okay with that for now, but eventually that's something that's going to change over time.
Yeah, you can tell too. He tries to get these floaters and these like soft touch layups around the rim, which I like. I think it's good to have finesse like that. But then there's other times where it's like, man, if you had just gone up maybe a little bit stronger, maybe you would at least have drawn a foul or something. And he's a pretty decent foul shooter. I mean, I think he's probably around 80% for his foul shooting this season. So you'd like to continue to see him be a little bit more aggressive on the ball and also off the ball. One thing I do like about Alex Sarr that we've seen this season, and for better or worse, but he tries to make the right pass, especially when he sees guys going to the rim. And you mentioned that a second ago. And it's not going to work all the time. I think Valanciunas also has had a lot of moments like that this year, and he's a veteran that's been in the league, a long time, and he still tries to make those passes. And, I think that the way guys are able to react and use their wingspan to steal the ball, it's not always going to work. So I think that the one thing that I like about all the young guys is they try to make the right pass, whether it's Bilal, whether it's Keyshawn, Bub, Alex. I mean, all those guys try to make the right play when they have the ball in their hands. Um, Moving off Sarge a little bit more to Keyshawn, and I actually would have started Keyshawn over Valanciunas, and I know this is going to go against popular belief, but I think they actually are probably a little bit better off rebounding when Keyshawn is in the game. And I think also the offense just moves a little bit more fluidly. They're able to play a little bit more faster. So I get why they started Valanciunas tonight. I wouldn't have done it personally. But again, it's not one of those things you're going to beat up Brian Keefe over. But Keyshawn, again, I mean, had statistically not the worst game when you look at it. But what I want to start to see Keyshawn develop is a sense of like awareness of when is the right shot and when it's maybe time to just settle down for a second or make the extra pass, try to get to the rim, maybe get it to a guard. To me, his three ball, and I think the argument for this is going to be like, they're the rookies. We have no one really else on the team. You want to see these guys get shots up. And yes, that's true, but I feel like at times he just turns into a chucker where I would like to see him be a little bit more selective with how and when he puts up certain shots. And again, it's not to say that I don't want him to shoot. I mean, if he's able to get, 10 3-pointers off a game, that's cool if it's in rhythm. And then maybe like one or two of those is a heat check and not like all of them. So that's one area where I would like to see Keyshawn improve. And ultimately, I think we're going to start to see that develop a little bit more, like with him attacking the basket and maybe trying to create a little bit more, is when he gets that handle up. And you can tell he has it like in his mind that he wants to attack and he wants to create, but his ball handling ability is just not there yet to be able to do certain things. But again, I mean, it's not like I'm killing Keyshawn. Again, it's not like they have a lot of creators on this team. I mean, it really is Bub and JP. And outside of that, it's like you may get a little bit from Bilal here or there, or Jared Butler, maybe Alex Sarr, but it's like, they don't really have anyone. So I get it from that standpoint. Sometimes when the offense is dead and then Keyshawn just happens to have the ball and he has to put up a shot. And those shots I get because it's like, I guess nothing else better was going to happen. But there are still times where Keyshawn is, I think he settles too easily on, this is going to be a 3-point attempt instead of trying to diagnose the defense a little bit more. Maybe just wait a second and look for the better shot.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think all in all, like I do agree with the sense that I wouldn't label him as a chucker, but he does fall into some of those kind of moments where it's just like, I don't mind him letting that fly, but there's a better shot. There's a better play that you can make. And, ultimately, like, I know he wants to see his shots fall. He's probably, he knows that the situation is that Kuzma's not playing right now. So he's getting bumped into getting extra minutes and getting extra opportunity. So I'm sure he wants to take full advantage of that. But ultimately, like him having a rough shooting night or overshooting doesn't usually kill me because I know I can expect, I can expect good activity from him on defense. He's always doing other things to contribute. He's a good passer. He's going for boards, plays hard. And I contrast that with, someone like Corey who, if Corey's chucking shots and he's not making them, he's also not giving you anything on the other end. Whereas Keyshawn, you're at least getting some kind of contribution from him where he's not guys go by him for a layup. And I did write something down while I was watching. I mean, I'm not the first person to make this observation, but it's kind of crazy how I think clearly it's crystallized, and tell me if you agree or disagree. But I'm pretty confident that, 7 games into the season that our best players on the roster are Jordan Poole, Bilal, and all the rooks. honorable mention to Jonas Valanciunas. I think statistically he's doing well, and that's one of those things where you need to watch the games to understand, because from a box score perspective, JV looks totally fine. It's just watching him struggle to move out there can be a little difficult. Maybe he picks up some activity and gets more comfortable as the season progresses, but I'm really not going to hold my breath for that. I think he's an old big, and that's kind of who he is. But he would probably be who I put slightly below that tier. But I think, Poole, Bilal, Bub, and Keyshawn have given us the best minutes out of anybody. And Sar too. Sar's been effective. He had a little bit of a wishy-washy game. He had some good moments. He had some bad moments, but I think it's just kind of crazy how it's shaking out this early into the season, that it's that apparent that our young guys are better than everybody else. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, no, I would. And again, I think that goes back to, the personnel that we had coming into the season, and it just really wasn't that great to begin with. So there really wasn't, oh, hey, Dakota, cat appearance. So there really wasn't a lot of people ahead of them to be like, yeah, we're that much better than you. I think consistently, like overall, I think Bilal's probably been our best player overall. He hasn't had the best shooting night the past couple games, but I think that's kind of just been everyone. Like, have we had like a genuine good shooting game yet? I don't think so. Again, I mean, tonight we shot 25% from 3, 40% from the field. I mean, that's just not going to cut it. And I feel like that's what it's been for most of these games so far. And they got to get their NBA legs under them, these young players, and they got to get into a rhythm, and that stuff's going to take time. That's not going to happen overnight. College players are used to playing, 20-something, 30-something games a season, not 80. So it'll be interesting to see if their shooting can get more consistent as the season goes on. And then obviously we want that to carry into the seasons moving forward. And going back to Keyshawn, like how we were just talking about him getting up certain shots. And it's like, yeah, we don't mind that right now. In 3 or 4 years, if he's still doing that, is that going to become an irritation? And so either one of two things needs to happen. Either get better shot selection, or you better start making them at a higher clip than what you're making them at. But again, it's nothing to be too worried about right now. And again, I mean, even with some of the shots he took, he was 37.5% from 3 tonight. Yeah, you'll take that percentage, I think, 9 times out of 10. So, and again, his percentage would have been higher probably if he took better shots. But really, man, I mean, looking at the box score here, Bub 4 of 11, Jordan Poole 3 of 10. Okay, well, those are your 2 lead guards right there. So that's where your offense starts. So that's not good shooting. Bilal 4 of 9. Alex 3 of 11. I mean, again, those are all your 4 main players right there, and that's not good. So, that's pretty much all you need to know as far as why wasn't this game a little bit more competitive. And that doesn't even talk about the lapses that they had on the defensive end of the floor. One player that I do want to give a little bit of a shout out to, non-Wizards related, is Jalen Wells, rookie 2nd round pick. I mean, he played some tough basketball out there, and I think it's a little bit easier for players that were maybe late 1st round or 2nd round picks to be able to play a little bit more competitively when you're playing on a team like Memphis, where you don't have to feel as much pressure. You're not going to be one of the main guys. You can just kind of fit in as a glue guy and just take your shots when they become available to you. It's not anything you have to go out of your way to go and do. And I feel like Jalen Wells is going to be a really solid player for this Memphis team, even when they have everyone in the lineup. I mean, that's a guy right there that you probably I don't know what their starting lineup has been so far this year, but even when Ja comes back, I mean, that'd probably be a guy I would lean to start if he wasn't already starting.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this game really just kind of pointed out the disparity between, a good established, playoff roster and a team that's at the beginning of a rebuild. I mean, they're missing Desmond Bane, Ja Morant, Marcus Smart, Vince Williams Jr., and I'm forgetting a couple names, but like those are big contributors. And Bane and Ja are both starters. Almada, I think, would be the other starter with Jaren Jackson, and then
Yeah. Yeah.
So that like that they had all those guys in street clothes essentially tonight. They had another 6 guys that they could have potentially fielded that also probably would have beat us to the same level that their bench did. And I mean, shout out to Jalen Wells, to your point. Shout out to Scottie Pippen Jr. had a triple double tonight. Jay Huff looked good, former Wizard. So I mean, they have a really deep roster. I guess I'm not surprised to see the results, but I did think this one, I said in the pregame show, I thought this one was had a chance to be competitive just because of all the bodies missing. But to our earlier point, this really just looked more like the games that we were expecting to see this season instead of getting treated to a nice, like, exciting start from all the young guys. So I do think there's going to be more of these games to come, unfortunately. But hopefully it's more competitive losses and not, being down by almost 30 the whole game and then putting up garbage time run.
Yeah, those are the games where it makes it hard to try to like find stuff to be positive about. Because obviously, if you're more competitive throughout the game, you're going to find more things to talk about, good about your team. So not too terribly much, but what we have to remember is that this is going to be a process. So, this isn't a year we're going to get on here and, oh man, Bub was a bust, Sar was a bust. Some people are going to say Sar is a bust. I don't think he's a bust. Fire Brian Keefe, who doesn't know what he's doing. Like, it's not going to be any of that this year from a reasonable fan perspective. And just going to be one of those things we have to enjoy and accept it for what it is, and shout out Memphis again. Like, they were missing a lot of bodies tonight. Like, you named some players and I was like, oh yeah, they do have those guys still, don't they? And it's like, you forget how depleted they are right now. And they were still able to blow out a team like the Wizards, who, and prior to tonight, had been very, very competitive in almost every game that they've played in so far. And that includes teams like Boston, Golden State, Atlanta. I mean, those are already right there, 3 playoff teams. Miami's a playoff team. So literally every team that the Wizards have played so far is slated to be in the playoff picture, if not a top 6 seed, right? So it hasn't been the easiest slate of opponents so far, but for what it's worth, the Wizards continue to truck along. And tonight, I know it wasn't competitive, but they've been competitive relatively so far. And hopefully we get a bounce back game from a couple of guys soon. I would like to see Bilal come out a little bit more aggressive next game. Again, he still did that thing tonight where he gets to the rim and it's like, oh, he's going to dunk it. Oh, he swings it to the corner. And it's like, bro, what are you doing, man? It's like, just dunk the damn ball. You're right there. The one thing I do like, and I said this when I was on the show with Matt last time, I'd rather players overpass than underpass. I appreciate that you're trying to make the right play. But damn, man, you're right there at the rim. Just dunk on somebody. And it's like, it's always when he's driving to the lane and he goes off one. Whenever he's under the rim and he can go off two, he tries going up on everyone every time on that. But whenever it's off one, it's like for some reason he feels like he needs to pass out of it. So I'm hoping that he'll eventually figure out that, nah, dude, I'm already right here. I'm just going to dunk it. Like, yeah, your head is at the rim. Yes, you should dunk the basketball. Yes.
I totally agree. And it's exaggerated by how just long his arms are. So you see someone like that go up with go gadget arms and you're like, oh yeah, you're like 2 inches away. You can just put that in. And then it goes, oh wait, why is the ball going further away from the rim? What are you doing? So I completely agree with you there. I think some of that, I mean, the finishing at the rim is part of it, but the last 2 games, Bilal's really struggled because I think, he got off to this hot start and, we went against some good coaches that know how to game plan. And I noticed it tonight that when he would catch and pump, the defender would immediately shift and take away his right drive. So he would be forced to go to the left, which he's not as comfortable doing, and it would just not work out as well. So that's a good thing for Bilal because he needs to develop those counters to become a more effective player. So I'm excited that coaches are keying in on that.
Yes.
That's a compliment to Bilal.
Yeah.
we know we have to game plan for you because that's something we have to take away from you. And I'm confident that he'll develop those counters. But yeah, there's still going to be growing pains. You know, as good of a player, as better of a player as he looks from year 1 to year 2, you know, it's a linear growth thing. Maybe in his case, exponential at some points, but like, you know, it's not just going to be always taking one step forward. Sometimes you're going to take a step backward too. So you just got to learn with that. And speaking of taking a step backward, Corey Kispert, man, I I think I tweeted last game was one of the worst games I'd seen from him. And from a box score perspective, he was better tonight, but man, I found myself just really frustrated. I think it's, you know, I'm expecting to see the Corey from last year who could finish at the rim at like a 65, 70% clip, and the guy who was a pretty, I don't want to say knockdown shooter, but you could trust him to hit an open three, and he's probably more likely on most guys on the team to do that. But man, he was trying to get at the rim and just getting stuff swatted at him. He got his pocket picked. He had a couple open threes that he was just bricking, and then on the other end, you know, he's just never been there as a defender, so he's letting guys by him like a layup line. He gives up backdoor cuts. So I really hope that he can find a way to kind of snap out of his struggles, especially after he was just given that extension. That's really not what like you'd like to see after giving someone their payday, to come out and immediately shoot like, I don't know what he is on the year, but I'm pretty sure he's under 30% from three.
Yeah, yeah.
So
It's not good. I think he was like what one for hold on. Yeah, 1 for 3 tonight. So 33%. And I guarantee you that's like way better than what we've seen throughout any of the other games so far this season. So yeah, he's been on the struggle bus for sure to start. So I'm sure that, you know, by law of averages, he'll get a little bit better. But I don't think I've ever considered him like a great shooter. I think at best I've considered him good. I think that the term I use the most is decent, or good enough. And I think that when you're talking about someone where his most positive attribute is shooting the ball, it just leaves you wondering, like, you know, now that he signed his contract, who's actually going to want the guy, especially if these numbers don't get up there from a percentage perspective.
this
Um,
billed as the best shooter coming out of his draft class. He was supposed to be the shooter, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I guarantee there's a couple guys in that class that are better than him shooting the ball right now. And because he doesn't offer much else as a defender, and you know, you don't look at him as a crazy board getter or passer. Yeah, it's tough.
yeah, I mean, I guess all we can say with him at this point is we hope the shooting splits turn around a little bit, because we would. I think that most people would agree that, and we're not going to get a package like we got for Denny. That's not happening. Denny had a very good season last year, and they were able to sell really high on him. And so far, it's looking like we got a good return on that deal. But we're not going to find that kind of deal for a player like Kispert. Denny Avdia was a good all-around two-way player who shot the ball really, really well last year, whereas Corey is a shooter who can't shoot right now. But I still think that, you know, they're going to try to ship him out for something, but obviously you're not going to be able to get much. And honestly, you may not even get a taker this year. And they probably, I don't think, can even trade him in the regular season anyway, because he just signed the extension. So I forget what the rule on that is, if they have to wait until the offseason or if he becomes trade eligible in January or whatever. I forget the rule on that for those guys that sign their extension like right before the season starts. But anyway, yeah, I mean, just hope that it gets better, man, because it sure as shit is not very good right now. So
I did, and I mean, this isn't to drag him in. This was the first game kind of from Poole where I really thought he struggled, to get himself looks and get other guys looks. I just got a little frustrated, and when the game got away from us early, I think, you know, I think I could be speaking out of turn, but it looked like to me on a couple plays he kind of just mentally checked out and was starting to go through the motions a bit in the second half. And I can't really blame him because we're down 30. But you know, that's also going to happen. Corey. Poole isn't really going to draw much of my ire just because he's come out of the gate playing really well this season. But
Yeah.
I did notice that this was kind of the first game where I was like, oh, he really struggled tonight. But again, we played a pretty good team, so um, I'm not going to make too much of it.
No, he's been really good, I think, on both ends of the court so far this season. Again, everyone has a stinker. And again, I think when we're not shooting the ball well as a team, it's going to make it harder for guys like him to be able to get the type of shots off, because when you can help in the paint and stuff, because you know that guys aren't hitting, and it makes it harder on JP to get a shot off, and that there really isn't anyone else on the team that can create, again, besides him and Bub. So it's really just put pressure on JP, because none of the other guys are going to do anything when they get the rock. So it is a lot of pressure on him to be a leader on both ends of the floor. But I think so far through the 7-8 games we played, I think that he's handled that role really, really well. So I'm not going to throw him under the bus or throw any shade at him for tonight because he had one game like this. And I mean, the guy played 22 minutes. It's not like he played 35 and, was like, 3 of 18 with like 8 turnovers or whatever. So, I mean, he's, we just got to remember that, the losing and stuff, and the bad, the missed shots and stuff, it can manifest into everyone at once. And again, that's how you get stinkers, where you shoot 25% from 3 as a team some nights. And again, with a team that doesn't have a lot of shooting to begin with, and doesn't have a lot of veterans to keep things a little bit more consistent, we are going to have a lot more nights like this. And that's okay, because it's a part of the process.
Yeah, I agree. I guess kind of switching gears a bit and trying to did you have any like positives that you wanted to pull from that? I know it was a tough one, but if you had to take some spins on this one, what would you
I the one that I'm going to keep coming back to, and it's one that I'm hoping, continues to be a theme throughout the rest of these games. But the fact that they really just compete, and I think that they're aggressive and they try to make the right play. And I think, to me, that that's a very good starting point whenever you have a group of young players. The results aren't there right now in terms of their shooting, and they don't exactly know where the ball needs to go all the time. Sometimes when the offense breaks down, they don't know what to go to. Well, all that stuff is going to come with time, shared with each other, but separately in the off season. Like we know, Bilal had a big off season with France, and that seemed to pay off really, really well, because, to be honest with you, he looks like a much better player so far, a much more complete player. And he's not there yet, but he's taken a big step into getting the player that we all hope and want him to be. So again, it's just going to take time, but I think that the one thing that I like is these young guys, they got fight, and they compete. And I think that when you got a team like this, that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, I agree. That's something I touched on in the pregame. I mean, it didn't, even though the score and the final score is ugly tonight, I did like seeing most of the fight from the younger guys. There wasn't I was going to say, like, my positive to takeaway was Bub. He's doing a ton of stuff that I love on the floor, on the court. I know he shot 4 from 11 tonight, but there was just he goes up for rebounds, like every rebound, and he's just skying one-handed trying to post it. Like, I love that that's his effort. There was a drive Jaren Jackson took in the first quarter where he was coming in and he drew Bub as the defender, and they bumped, and he pushed Jaren Jackson off of his drive, and he still held his spot. Like, stuff like that, and he's offensively, he's always, I don't think he really forces much. He makes the right play a lot of the time, and then he's a competitor. And that did kind of bring me to when Jackson gave him that hard foul later in the game, where he kind of went horizontal and landed on his arm. I was a little upset to see that nobody in a Wizards jersey kind of went at anybody on Memphis. I'm not saying you have to, go punch Jaren Jackson Jr. or anything like that, but stick up for your guy, man. Because everything I hear about Bub and everything I see on the court is that this dude is a fighter, and he's a dog. And I mean, you heard Draymond on his pod shouting out Keyshawn and Bub for talking shit and he earned their respect. So I mean, these are two guys that are very competitive. So I would have liked to see, you know, the team kind of rally around the young guy that's kind of galvanizing people. So that was a little bit of a gripe I had, but you know, that's really neither here nor there. I think most of these guys, you know, hard fouls happen in the NBA. It was an unfortunate fall. I was just being overprotective of our precious Bub Carrington, and I was ready to throw hands. But once I saw him, you know, get back out there or play later and get on the court, I think a lot of that rage subsided. But yeah.
Yeah, he's a go-getter for sure, and that's something that we're going to need in this long season. You know, we're hoping that we can watch these games and we'll continue to have a lot of positive takeaways, even in losses like this, and you know, playing hard and fighting for rebounds. And again, Brian Keefe said as much. You know, when we rebound, we're a really tough team to guard, and that's even when they can't shoot. Now, imagine if they could rebound and shoot. You know, the Wizards might have one or two losses right now only. But again, it's a process. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day, and we'll just continue to see how these young guys develop as the season goes on. I think when's our next game? Well, I don't have the schedule pulled up here.
I think it's Monday. I think we play. Oh, I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it's on Monday. I can't remember who we play.
Let me pull it up here. It is Sunday at Orlando.
Orlando. Okay.
Yeah, we were on a 5-game road trip, so we have Sunday in Orlando, then the second night of a back-to-back on Monday will be in Houston, and then Wednesday in San Antonio, and then Friday we see the Hawks again. So again, it's all these teams that we've played and are going to play, save for the Spurs, and they have Victor Wembanyama, but all those teams are going to be in the playoff mix there. So it's been a very good test so far for the Wizards, and we'll see how they respond Sunday evening in Orlando.
Yeah. Well, with that, I think, you know, unless there's anything you think we want to touch on or anything I'm missing, I was going to jump to some of these comments and, you know, we can riff on those for a sec.
Yeah,
start,
let's go.
OBJ to Don, terrible performance. Yeah. I mean, it just wasn't our night tonight. You know, we didn't shoot the ball well. We didn't rebound well. We gave up tons of second chance points.
Oh, there you go. That's the summary. That's why you lose by 30.
Seems like Sarr is losing confidence in his shot. I don't know. I wouldn't go. It's still really early in the season. I think he just doesn't have a developed offensive toolkit to kind of fall back on.
Like it's hard to lose confidence in something when I feel like you never really had confidence in it to begin with, because like it's still developing a relatively, like, you know, newer skill set. I mean, the guy is 19, 20 years old. And I think he realizes that, you know, okay, not all of my shots should be jump shots, right? I'm sure that there is that, like, you know, and the coaching staff is trying to tell him, you know, be around the rim. But he needs to take his shots when they're available. I think a lot of the time too, what sucks for him is I think he gets the ball a lot of the times late in the shot clock and he's forced to put up a shot. And it's not the best in the world. Same with Keyshawn. I mean, I know I got on Keyshawn earlier about shot selection, but sometimes, you know, you got to do what you got to do to get a shot up before it hits zero. So I think that Alex suffers from that a little bit, but I would say that we would like to continue to see Alex shooting the ball, and I think that when he's open, hopefully he will shoot it or try to make the right play. You know, I mean, these guys are 19, 20 years old. They're not going to make the right play all the time. It's not realistic.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to see him passing up open looks from three. I know he's a 7-footer, but you know, if you can develop that part of the game, I mean, look what Jaren Jackson Jr. did tonight. He was hitting threes against us. So sometimes, you know, having a guy that can do that and also be versatile in the defensive end is really huge for your team. So, Buddha Belly, even though Kispert had 14 points, he really didn't have a good game. He hasn't had a good game yet. Why? Yeah. Looks like he took a step back, certainly not at the same level as last year. I mean, the why, he doesn't play defense. And to Brandon's point earlier, he's a shooter that's a decent shooter. And when he's not hitting those shots, he's really not giving you much else. He's not a big playmaker. You know, he gets glorified. Oh, Kispert's such a great cutter. And I'm not saying he's not a good cutter, but like, you know, it doesn't really matter if all you can do is cut and miss 3-pointers. So that's why
you could find guys off the street to do that.
Yeah, Johnny Davis actually. So there's a world where I could advocate for giving Johnny Davis minutes over Corey right now, and that's kind of wild.
And that's what I said in our chat earlier. I mean, his shooting is really the only thing that's keeping me. His shooting, I guess, in an ideal world, is the only thing that's keeping me from saying just put Johnny Davis in, because I'd rather see guys compete on the defensive end of the floor instead of the shooting, because we're going to be a brick on the other end anyway. Until some of our other guys find some consistency. So, and if Corey's not going to do it, well, then there kind of goes your purpose for being out there, so.
Yep. 8-0 half Stefan. The Wizards need to be a franchise demotion to the G League, like Bronny. We know what we are. We know we're in a rebuild. Last year under Wes Unseld and half of the season where we're playing vets over the rookies and the young guys and all that stuff. Yeah, that situation was not pretty, but I know we're going to probably finish with a top lottery pick or whatever, but the situation we're in right now is way better, I think, for developing players. I mean, we have 3 rookies playing 20 minutes a night. Bilal's getting 30 minutes a night. That was not the case last year. So, not going to be too hard on the Wizards, just because for the first time in a long time, I feel like they're actually taking the steps to do the right thing, and it is going to be a long process, but respect to them for actually finally doing that.
Yeah, and I think G League is, I don't know that that's hyperbole, but would a G League team beat the Atlanta Hawks twice in a row?
True.
Would they be competitive with Boston and Miami and Golden State?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think some of that is just residual Wizards suffering that we're all used to, and we've all kind of accepted our role as being bad for a long time. But guys, there's a light at the end of the tunnel on this one. I'm pretty confident on it. I really, and that'll bring me to this next one, Buddha Belly. I like that we have 4 under 20-year-olds getting starter NBA minutes. This is a true rebuild. Yeah. I mean, and not only to that point, all those guys are two-way players. Every single one of them. They contribute on both ends of the court. They might not hit all their shots every night. And I mean, they still have developing to do in other aspects of their game, but those guys will compete on both ends of the court. And that's awesome. That's really all I can hope for having young players in a rebuild, is that there's stuff to build off.
You can tell that they're missing like a 1A guy. Like you could tell, but those 4 and how they compete on both ends of the floor and the way that they play the game, I think in 3 or 4 years, we're going to see it. We're going to see the fully painted picture. And I think they're all going to complement each other very, very well.
Yeah. Buddha Belly again, we will have many more games like this. It's important that they don't check out when we are down 20, something to watch for. I agree. I mean, we just talked about that. We're going to lose a lot of games this year. What I want to see is fight and competitive edge from the young guys. I want to see them just not throw in the towel. I don't think they did that. I did see, Keefe kind of switch the lineups up. We saw Jared Butler getting out there a little more. Johnny Davis was getting out there. They even put, Rashawn Holmes and PBJ, Patrick Baldwin Jr., for those who don't know why I'm calling that. And, that kind of stuff, that's fine if you're just getting creamed and it's just like, all right, we can pull the plug on this one. But through 3 quarters, even though the results were not pretty, they were still trying to make the right plays. They were still trying to do the right thing. We just got beat by a better team. We couldn't hit our shots, and they were getting tons of second chance buckets. It's the NBA. There's 82 games. Sometimes you're going to have stinkers.
Yeah, they're definitely going to have stinkers like this. I think that one thing I want to see them pick up a little bit better on was transition defense. I'm fine with guys sometimes getting a little bit lost, but not getting back and finding a guy in transition is something that's not going to cut it for me watching all season. That's something I'd like to see them get a little bit better at. That was really bad, especially to start the game.
Agree. That kind of pulls in all the most comments that we got there. I appreciate all you guys that leaving comments and giving us stuff to talk about. Thanks for being with In Matt Moderno's stead, he's over jet setting in Italy and eating great food. He sent me a picture of his pasta plate earlier, and he posted some on Twitter. You know, would love to be over there, but happy to hold it down for you in the meantime, Matt. And then Brendan, do you have any kind of like closing comments or anything you want to touch on? Before we get out of here.
I just hope that they bounce back and have a much better game against the Magic, and that's all we can hope for.
Well, cheers to that. I can definitely agree with that one. So with that being said, we'll close the book on this kind of rough loss, and then we'll look forward to the next one and see how they can do. But again, I'm Will Clayton. You guys can find me on Twitter at Will Clayton. And this is Brendan. You can find him. Brendan, do you want to plug yourself?
Yeah, man, follow me on Twitter at Threes is Trice. If you're not subscribed to the Wizards of Gallery Place podcast, please give us a subscription. We haven't posted much lately, and that is actually 100% my fault. But we will probably be dropping an episode within the next couple of days or so. I got to get with Damo on the scheduling on that, but we'll give you our own individual and duly collected thoughts on how our season has gone so far.
Awesome. Well, Brennan, I appreciate you dropping by with me to do the post game tonight. Always a pleasure. And, Wiz fans, we'll get them on the next one. Catch y'all later, guys.